Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin just confirmed a massive warning signal on the larger timeframes that we need to pay attention to, as one of the largest Bitcoin whales in the world just actually bought more Bitcoin, which I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside Ethereum still struggling at this key area of resistance, while the price of Solana is continuing to play out and form this new signal in the short term. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a look at the Bitcoin news today, because a matter of hours ago, Michael Saylor just announced that Strategy, previously known as MicroStrategy, has just bought more Bitcoin. Of course, Strategy is one of the largest Bitcoin whales in the world, and this time around, they only bought around 705 Bitcoin, which is obviously still a lot of Bitcoin, but for Strategy, that is a relatively small purchase of around $75 million worth of Bitcoin. And so obviously this purchase in particular didn't necessarily have a massive impact on the price of Bitcoin, but obviously if we're looking at the total amount of Bitcoin that Strategy is currently holding as a company, they're now holding almost 581,000 Bitcoin that they acquired for over $40 billion. But you have to keep in mind that out of the total 21 million limit for Bitcoin, the total supply of Bitcoin, of course, there's still some Bitcoin left to be mined. Also, Satoshi is estimated to hold around 1 million Bitcoin. There's obviously millions of Bitcoin that are estimated to be lost forever. And so in reality, there's only a few million Bitcoin, give or take, that's actually relatively liquid, that it's going to be bought and sold on the market. And so considering that fact, considering there's only a relatively small amount of Bitcoin, just a few million Bitcoin that's liquid in the supply, obviously Strategy is now gathering quite a large percentage of the liquid supply of Bitcoin. And as this goes on, if this continues, if Strategy continues to buy more and more Bitcoin, obviously that means less Bitcoin is available for everyone else, and that can ultimately cause a supply squeeze where there's basically not enough Bitcoin to go around. So with all of these buyers wanting to buy Bitcoin, like Strategy, other companies, and of course just retail investors like you and me, as we are wanting to buy more and more Bitcoin, if there's less and less Bitcoin to go around, ultimately the buyers will have to bid for higher and higher prices, to the point where there's some people interested in selling their Bitcoin at those higher prices. And so in the immediate short term, obviously a purchase like this is not necessarily going to have a massive impact on the price of Bitcoin, but over the longer term, as this massive accumulation continues over a long period of time, once again, this can likely cause a major supply squeeze, shooting the price much higher over the longer term. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today on this 4-day time frame, the super trend indicator is still in the green, so not much has changed on this chart over the last 1 day. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, once again, like I've said recently here on the channel, we are starting to slow the bullish momentum. So we've not yet confirmed a new bearish crossover on the weekly time frame in the MACD indicator, but once again, we're slowing the bullish momentum, which is a sign of weakness in the short term. And now it is worth pointing out that it is entirely possible we could just see a shorter term break during a larger bullish move, kind of like what we saw near the end of 2023 entering into the start of 2024. Obviously back then we started to see a slowdown in the momentum, in the bullish momentum, moving towards a bearish crossover, but we never actually confirmed the bearish crossover, so we remained within the larger bullish trend. And so just keep that in mind. Until we actually confirm a bearish crossover in the weekly Bitcoin MACD, there's still the possibility that we can remain within this larger bullish movement, the larger bullish trend. And for all we know, this could just be a shorter term break, a shorter term pause during the larger move, kind of like what we saw near the end of 2023. But in order to stay in this bullish move, ideally we need to see another bullish move very, very soon. In other words, a breakout above the highs here within the next 1 to 2 weeks, in order to avoid further confirming this new bearish divergence on the weekly Bitcoin price chart. Because at least for now, we technically have one confirmation signal, one weekly candle close that's just confirmed over the last 1 day, confirming the lower high in place in the weekly Bitcoin RSI. So obviously we've already confirmed higher highs in the price in the candle closes on the weekly time frame, and now that we have lower highs forming and just starting to confirm, obviously this is a bearish divergence on the weekly time frame. And the last bearish divergence we saw on this weekly Bitcoin chart was between these two highs right here. So the high at March 2024 and around December 2024. Between those two highs in the price of Bitcoin, obviously we had higher highs in the price and lower highs in the RSI. And what came next was a decent pullback over the next few months for basically the first quarter of this year. And now, of course, there's also other factors that did help to cause that pullback in the first quarter of this year, like for example, the trade war news, the tariff news that were happening during that time right here. But keep in mind, of course, a bearish divergence is at least a warning signal telling us that we're losing bullish momentum. So like I said near the beginning of this year, we were due to see a major slowdown, which did ultimately play out. But it is worth mentioning that a bearish divergence by itself is not always a trend reversal signal. A lot of people will tell you that a bearish divergence means it's a trend reversal signal and we're about to reverse from bullish into a new bear market, like for example what we saw in 2022, but that's not always the case. Like this most recent example, obviously we did not have a major 1 year bear market in the first quarter of this year. It was only just for a couple of months before ultimately recovering. And then we saw an even shorter bearish divergence play out still on the weekly time frame during around the middle of 2023. We had slight higher highs in the price and lower highs in the weekly Bitcoin RSI. And of course, we did see a pullback in the price of Bitcoin over the next 1 to 2 months, give or take, but ultimately recovered later on within just a couple of months. And so just keep this in mind, as this is now starting to confirm on the weekly time frame, this is really telling us that we're likely going to see a larger slowdown in the coming weeks or possibly months for the price of Bitcoin. So not necessarily a bear market, but once again, just a slowdown at the very least, some sideways price action, possibly a larger pullback. So not really significant bullish momentum, especially if we see more confirmation signals in the next 1 to 2 weeks here. And so really the next 1 week, 1 to 2 weeks, this is very crucial for the price of Bitcoin to quickly invalidate the bearish divergence. The next 1 week really is when we need to do this, because the longer we take here to actually break out into this all-time high, ultimately we'll just continue growing weakness and just basically see a larger pullback as a very likely outcome if we fail to break out basically within the next 1 to 2 weeks. And so now obviously if we end up breaking out just in the next 1 week or so, let's just say in a couple of days from now we break out into new all-time highs, in that situation that can pull the RSI further towards the upside and at least temporarily invalidate the bearish divergence. So that is what we need to see for the bulls out there. We need to see a quick breakout very soon to actually invalidate this signal. But with that being said, taking a look at the 3-day time frame, obviously we're still finding resistance at this previous all-time high breakout level, sitting at roughly around 110,000, still showing signs of weakness in the 3-day Bitcoin price oscillators. And if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, when it comes to support and resistance, we have a lot of support at roughly around 102,000, and we are also finding some support at around 104,000, give or take. And as for resistance, I'll be focusing on roughly 106,000 and also at around 110,000 and 112,000. And if the price of Bitcoin were to break below this support right here at around 101 to 102,000 with confirmation, so especially confirming candle closes below that level, in that situation, we could likely see a drop down towards around 96 to 98,000 as the next significant area of support. But once again, only if we first break below around 101 to 102,000. And if we're taking a look at the somewhat shorter term on the 12-hour time frame, obviously we're still playing out the bearish divergence, as I've been saying every day since all the way back up here over a week ago. So technically speaking, at least for now, while the RSI is still trending in the bearish direction on the 12-hour time frame, forming lower highs and lower lows, technically the bearish divergence is still active. We've not yet confirmed any invalidation signal to invalidate the bearish divergence. And so ultimately, this is still telling us that we are seeing a lot of weakness in the short term for Bitcoin. But like I explained in my last video, just for the weekend, just for the next couple of days in the immediate short term, it is quite likely we could see a slight little relief. So a bit of a short-term break from the pullback, but still overall weakness. So not necessarily a massive amount of bullish momentum. Basically, what we've seen over the last 1 day is likely going to continue for a little longer, maybe for another 1 to 2 days. And that's simply because we are trending closer towards oversold, especially on the smaller time frames. We're getting closer towards those oversold signals. So it's perfectly normal to see a little bit of a reset in the shorter term. And so overall, those are my expectations in the shorter term for the price of Bitcoin. And of course, the larger situations showing signs of weakness and possible warning signals on the larger time frames. But if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, the key price levels to pay attention to where there's a lot of liquidity are, first of all, at around 102 to $103 103,000, and then of course at closer towards all-time highs, so around 110,000 and close towards around 112 to 113,000. But considering the fact that obviously between the current price and those higher areas of liquidity, we do have a lot of resistance in that price range right here, and also considering the fact that the downside liquidity is obviously much closer to the price of Bitcoin currently, it is more likely that we're going to hit the downside liquidity than the upside liquidity, at least in the shorter term here. And that's what we saw time and time again just over the last 1 week, give or take, close to a week ago now. Obviously with this pullback, we were basically growing liquidity to the downside, took out that liquidity, and then obviously grew more liquidity to the downside, took out that liquidity, so on and so forth. And so we're simply potentially about to repeat that again. So once again, we're growing liquidity just below the price of Bitcoin, and we could likely now take out that liquidity very soon, potentially in the next couple of days or so, maybe after another 1 day of a little bit of a relief once again, like I said earlier, and then perhaps in a couple of days from now, we could see another little drop just to take out that liquidity at around 102 to 103,000. But obviously, for as long as we're holding above, especially 101 to 102,000, this level on the price chart, at least for now, the trend on the daily time frame is technically still bullish. Despite seeing short-term pullbacks along the way, we are still forming higher lows and higher highs on the daily Bitcoin price chart, which is effectively a bullish trend. And so for the Bitcoin bulls out there, that 101k to 102k level is the key level that we need to hold above to actually remain within this bullish trend. And so considering all of that information, my current trading strategy has not really changed at all over the last 1 day. So obviously, if you've been watching my channel over the last 1 month, you'll know that I'm still in the swing trade long position that I entered over a month ago now on the channel, with my stop loss still sitting at the same level it was sitting at yesterday. And you can see my current realized profits have not changed over the last 1 day. So once again, no new changes here, and that's because technically speaking, the trend is still bullish, at least for now. We've not yet confirmed a reversal out of this bullish trend, but like I just said earlier, if we break below these lows at around 101 to 102,000, that will be the point where we'll potentially see a trend reversal signal, basically a breakdown in the price structure. And so due to that, of course, I have my stop loss just below that point right there. And if you also want to take trades just like this for yourself to make a lot of easy money in the crypto market, like what I'm doing right here, then of course you have to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And personally, I'm taking this trade right here over on 2bit. So I'll make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, you can get some massive trading bonuses that are only available using the link below this video. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want 2bit as an exchange, there's also BTNex as another exchange out there that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to BTNex below this video. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here, where you can also claim some massive trading bonuses, like for example, up to 35,000 USDT you can claim using the link below this video just by trading crypto. But if you're not one of these larger traders here, you can also get deposit bonuses. Like for example, if you deposit just $1,000 using the link below this video, you get a $200 bonus into your BTNex account. And so if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, or if you're preparing to take the next trading opportunity in the price of any crypto, you might as well get set up ready to go using the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim these massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And in case you're wondering, BTNex is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a look at Ethereum on the daily time frame, and technically Ethereum is still simply lacking momentum in the shorter term, bouncing around between support and resistance. And obviously this is exactly what I've been saying for the last 1 to 2 weeks now on the channel. You can go back and check my videos over the last 1 to 2 weeks. Once again, I've been saying we're looking very neutral, lacking momentum to either direction. So we're not overly bullish or overly bearish, at least for now. We're basically just in a sideways price range. And the support for the sideways price range is sitting at around 2.4K. And we also have a bit of support at roughly around 2470. And as for resistance, we have significant resistance in between around 2.7K to 2.8K. And obviously, if you're just holding Ethereum, this type of price action is very boring to see, because obviously over the last couple of weeks, we've barely moved at all. But as traders, we can make a lot of easy profits in the market when we're seeing choppy sideways price action just like this, using grid bot strategies and things like that. And if you also want to know how you can easily profit, yes, make easy money in the crypto market during price action just like this, then stick stick around to the end of this video to find out more. But first of all, taking a look at the shorter term Ethereum price chart on the 6-hour time frame, technically speaking, this bearish price target is still in play because we've not yet invalidated this break to the downside. And so this bearish price target is still sitting at approximately 2250, so right in between 2.2k to 2.3k. But of course, as I've also mentioned over the last 1 week, give or take, essentially the moment we broke below this support, yes, we have this price target in play, but we also have other points of support where the price would likely bounce at. So for example, around 2470, as I mentioned earlier, and as I've been mentioning many times recently here on the channel, 2470 is a key point of support to watch out for. And as I've also mentioned many times recently here on the channel, the price is lacking momentum to either direction. So yes, that means not much bullish momentum, but it also means not much bearish momentum. We're looking very neutral, at least in the shorter term, for the price of ETH. And if the price of ETH ultimately breaks out back above around 2.6k, give or take, that would technically invalidate this break to the downside for this triangle pattern and invalidate this price target. But with that being said, taking a look at the price of Solana on the daily time frame, and unlike Ethereum showing very neutral price structure in the shorter term, Solana obviously is playing out bearish price structure. We have already broken below some key support here, which was sitting at around $165 approximately. And so I'd now expect a lot of resistance in between 165 to 167 in case we see a bit of a bounce here, and more resistance at around 184 approximately. And as for support, we do have a decent amount of support in between around 143 to 146, give or take, and a small amount of support at roughly around 153. And if we're zooming into the shorter term Solana price chart, looking at the 4-hour time frame, obviously over the last few days, for almost a week, we've been pulling back, perfectly playing out this break to the downside. And obviously we already hit that previous price target as predicted, but now we're starting to play out a new bullish divergence with lower lows confirmed in the price in the candle closes and higher lows still forming, but also confirmed here on the 4-hour Solana RSI. And so the opposite to a bearish divergence, this bullish divergence means we could potentially see a little bit of strength start to regain in the shorter term. So not necessarily a massive amount of bullish momentum immediately, but at least a bit of a break from all of this bearish price action here is likely going to play out, maybe just for a couple of days, considering this is only on the 4-hour time frame. And obviously over the last 1 to 2 days, we've already started to see choppy sideways price action as one of the most common outcomes from a bullish divergence. So as I always say, expect price action just like this, or perhaps a slight bullish relief as the most common outcomes from a bullish divergence. And obviously this is already starting to perfectly play out exactly as I've been predicting, and once again will likely play out at least over the next 1 day, possibly 1 to 2 days. And so overall, those are my shorter term expectations for the price of Solana, and of course the larger price structure to pay attention to. And if we're taking a look at the price of XRP, it's a similar situation for XRP. Technically speaking, the price structure is technically bearish. We have broken below this previous key level on the price chart, but in the immediate short term, we're running into key support and seeing a bit of a break from the pullback, just like what I've been saying throughout the video. And so this key level of support to focus on is sitting at around $2.14, but really in between around $2.10 to $2.15. That is the area of support to focus on. And technically speaking, we are at risk of possibly forming a head and shoulders pattern if we see a bit more of a bounce here in the short term over the next few days, over the next 1 week, and then ultimately pull back and then break below this neckline. Technically speaking, that could form a head and shoulders pattern, which would be very bearish for the price of XRP. But once again, it's important to understand that that possible head and shoulders pattern is not confirmed. It is not playing out right now. It's just possibly forming. So something to pay attention to in case it continues forming here. And as for other levels of support and resistance, obviously, if we see a bit more of a bounce here, we do have this key level of resistance sitting at roughly around 234, but really in between 230 to 234, I'll be focusing on that area as resistance. And we have more resistance at around 244 and major resistance in between around 255 to 262. And as for support, if we break below this area in between 210 to 215, in that case, we do have a small amount of support at $2.05 and also at around $2. But if we break below especially $2 with confirmation, in that situation, we'll likely see a break at least down towards around $1.80 as the next significant point of support if we were to break below all of these other levels first, obviously. But overall, my expectations is that we're still in this pullback phase, still seeing weakness, but in the immediate short term, just for the next 1 or 2 days, expect a small relief, just a bit of a break from the pullback just in the immediate short term, now that we're running into key support. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, it's a very similar situation for Chainlink. We're still seeing bearish price structure on the daily time frame, still technically in the pullback phase. We should not be expecting a significant amount of bullish momentum right now, but in the immediate short term, we should be expecting just a slight little pause, at least from all of the pullback here, because we are running into some key support. And of course, Chainlink follows a lot of the crypto market, like what I've been saying throughout the video. And so, for example, if Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., see pauses in the shorter term like this, that can influence the price of Chainlink and a lot of other altcoins to do something similar. And as for other levels of support to focus on, if we break below 1350, the next support will be sitting at around 1320, around 1280, 1220, and if we break below all of those levels, then we could expect a drop below $11, down towards around $10 as the next major area of support. Obviously, if we first break below all of these other levels, but for now, around 1350 is the key support to focus on. And just like I said for XRP, possibly at risk of forming a head and shoulders pattern, Chainlink is also at risk of possibly doing the same if we see a bit of a bounce first in the shorter term. So if we see more of a bounce over the next 1 week, give or take, back up towards this golden pocket and then reject from that area, obviously that would form a head and shoulders pattern, which would be very bearish for the price of Chainlink if it continues forming and then ultimately confirms. And so once again, I want to make it clear, at least for now, that possible head and shoulders pattern is not confirmed. It is not in play, but it is possibly forming. So something to pay attention to in case we see a bit more of a bounce and then ultimately confirm the pattern. And as for resistance, I would expect significant resistance in this golden pocket again, still sitting in between around 1490 to 1550 if we were to see a bit more of a bounce here in the short term. And so overall, those are my expectations for the price of Chainlink and the key points of support and resistance to watch out for, and potential price patterns to watch out for as well. And of course, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, like what I'm doing right here for Bitcoin, then you have to be set up ready to go using the links below this video if you want to claim those massive bonuses over on those exchanges, which are only available using those links. And of course, if you want to actually know how you can trade crypto, like what I'm doing right here, to easily profit in the market, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.